Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Website Copywriter. I am very, very, very excited today to have Jag with me talking about his 7-step model. Is that right, Jag?
Yeah.
I'm going to pass it straight over to you to introduce yourself and talk about this really exciting model. So over to you, Jag.
Thanks, Hannah. And thanks for having me on your podcast. So I'm Jag Panesar, and I run a digital marketing agency called Xpand. We've been going for about 15 years, and we deal with everything that helps businesses build their brand, gain inquiries, and get a return on investment. The 7-stage model is basically just our interpretation of how we kind of explain the way that marketing, the process that you should go through marketing to get ultimately to return on investment, because of course that's what everybody wants. That's what at least every private organization and even non-private organization wants, some kind of return. You want to kind of make an investment in your marketing rather than see it as a cost and get something back. There's 7 stages to getting to that. So with that, what I'm thinking is, rather than going into all kinds of crazy detail around it, maybe kind of talk about just some elements of it. But what I'll do is I'll just go give it a really quick overview. The 7 stages. Stage 1 is discovery, understanding where you've been, where you are, where you want to go, who your audience are, and who your competition are. So lock yourself in a room and just get that information out. No distractions, no phones or anything like that. Stage 2 is creating the strategy. And stage 3, so the outcomes from the strategy needs to be, we need to do this in January, we need to do that in February, and so on and so on and so on. Stage 3 is looking at as a part of the strategy, is looking at your brand and your message, and that's kind of at the heart of the model. Stage 4 is your website. So once you've got your brand and your message in place, that needs to go on your website. So imagine if it was a solar system, your brand and your website are kind of like the sun. They're at the center of everything. And then the planets that rotate around the sun are all the different ways that you can draw traffic to your site. That's stage 5. The planets are different channels. So they might be things like search marketing, social media, advertising, PR, email marketing. And you need a combination of these different, all these different channels that are relevant to your target audience to get to drive traffic to your site. And then stage 6 is reviewing and measuring the activity and fine-tuning what's working and readjusting what isn't working, and that ultimately is what leads to stage 7, which is return on investment. And it's as simple as that, folks. That's all you've got to do.
That's a really, really clear, nice description of it. It really helps to have a model. I love a good model, because it really helps to explain, doesn't it? And it helps people see. So who is it that you usually work with? What kind of businesses are you helping?
So we primarily work with B2B organizations. So it tends to be construction, manufacturing, and what I would describe as business services, the legal sector, finance, recruitment, HR, that kind of thing. So that's kind of where we really aim for, but we do have a client base across all kinds of sectors. The more recognizable names we have worked with are Lindt Chocolate and Tetley Brewery. But like I said, the core focus tends to be manufacturing and construction, because I think as sectors, they often find they're brilliant at, constructing these things in the real world or making widgets. But sometimes there tends to be a bit of a hesitancy to move into the digital world because it's not part of their arena. And that's where we're able to really step in and just kind of dissect the whole element of the business, all the elements of the business, and just see what the key things are they need to do to sustainably and systematically step into the digital world, not say, right, boom, you need to do this, because there's a lot of cultural change involved as well in kind of adapting to all these new things that are happening.
Yeah, so how do you find people understand that model? Because I think that's a really clear description. Do you find that your customers kind of pick it up really easily?
Yeah, I mean, the way it came about was it was a number of years, and when I was sat in meetings with clients, I would be just scribbling out kind of how it should work and the order that things should happen in, because digital marketing is a little bit like, so let's think of the universe. If you think of as scientists, we know what's happening. We know how many times the Earth rotates around the sun. We know how many times the moon rotates around the Earth. To a scientific point, we know almost by the minute what's going to happen. We might have got as far as Pluto. Is that still a planet? I don't know. I'm not really a scientist, but we know certain amounts of things, and we know the next time Halley's Comet is going to fly past. But the stuff that we just do not know about, and it's a very fuzzy kind of idea. And there's a lot that we don't know about digital marketing because there's so many elements that keep moving. And drawing out, one time I came across and drew out kind of my interpretation of it. And I was just kind of sketching it out with my team. And one of them said, "Oh, it looks like a solar system." And I thought, "Oh, brilliant, that's a great idea." And we called it Solar 7. So what we did was we essentially productized what the service is. And I always say, we're not reinventing the wheel. Any marketers that are hearing what I'm talking about would say, yeah, that's a very logical process. But to people who specialize in making widgets, or these construction specialists or these other things, they specialize in those things. It just kind of, what I like to call it visual expertise. It's just a way of visually explaining as a model, this is kind of how it looks. And I find it really helps explain, get people on board and understanding. And even from our part, we often kind of, I talk at seminars and webinars about it, and I encourage people to use it as a framework. We get nothing from it if it's helping explain it, but if it's helping them understand and clarify the way that they should approach their own marketing, then I see that as a job done.
Oh, helping people understand is half the battle, isn't it? It's
absolutely.
Getting people to understand the value in certain services can be a challenge, but if you've got something like that in your back pocket to whip out in a meeting, I think it really, really helps, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were just having a discussion before we started recording. There's the ability these days. There's the ability to do a lot of your own marketing yourself. There's all kinds of amazing technology out there. You can build your own website using platforms like Wix and Squarespace, and they have a place. When somebody's starting out and they've got no budget and they've got a little bit of something about them, you can easily build something that has that presence. It may not rank really well on Google, but if you just need that basic web presence, that's fine. But if you need something to perform, that's where it needs to be, custom built, and you need to be getting an agency involved. I think kind of, this kind of a model just helps understand that whether you are this multi-million-pound business or just starting out, I feel the overall process is something that's there that kind of generically stays the same.
Yeah, because usually people know they need a website, and that's about as far as the knowledge goes. They know they need a website. So the first point of contact is a web designer, or something like a DIY website builder, like you say. But there's so much more. It never ends, doesn't it?
It's so interesting. And it's so interesting because, one thing I always say is, you can get a handyman to come in and do your plastering and build a brick wall and do your wiring and maybe attempt doing your gas works. They probably shouldn't if they're not, registered for it. But, you get the one person that can do everything. But the reality is they're probably not going to be brilliant at it all. When we're talking about web design, I always say there's 5 key skill sets that really needs to be brought in for a site to be successful. And they are, you need a good, the UX design. It isn't just about something that knows how to make something look pretty. It's the user experience and the user flow, and knowing what pages you want the person to go, your user to go through to get to where that thing that you want them to do, make a booking or purchase or make an inquiry or whatever. So that's the UX designer. That's number 1. Number 2 is the web developer. You have to have a good developer that can develop the site and make it work well and design it and develop it so it's lean, so Google likes it, so it's very lightweight. You need an SEO expert to have the right kind of SEO keywords and all that kind of stuff in there. That information then needs to go to a professional copywriter. The copywriter needs to kind of put that into there, and that obviously needs to sit within the website. That's arguably the most important thing. The message is so fundamental, the power of words. You could have a beautiful, sexy website, but if it isn't saying anything, what does that mean? It's all about the message. And then finally, the marketer. The marketer is the person that kind of pulls it all together and kind of is able to look at and say, right, what should that messaging be from the copywriter? Does that design speak to the audience, and kind of get the marketer to actually know how it should be put together in order for it to speak to the audience and compete with the other competitors and whatnot. And they're the 5 key skill sets that I firmly believe and know from experience. When you get all those 5 right within a website, that's when you're really going to produce something that's on point.
So you have an agency, right? Is that where's that based?
We're based in Saltaire in West Yorkshire.
So do you have an in-house team of all those people you've just talked about? Yeah,
yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And how long have you been when did you set up? How long did you...
We've been going for 15 years. So I was made redundant. I was a marketing manager for a manufacturing company. I was made redundant. And then I thought, okay, well, I'll set up on my own. My plan was never to build an agency. It was just to stay on my own. So for the first 5 years, I just operated kind of almost like an outsourced marketing manager. And then I got involved in other businesses. I probably bit a little bit more off than I could chew. I thought I was kind of going to be the next Alan Sugar or something, but I thought, actually, that's not me. I'm just going to stick, because what happened was with the other businesses, my focus, my attention was just all over the place. So I eventually ended up dropping them and just focusing on Xpand. And when I did that, within 6 months, I started employing, and then we grew from myself to 4 people within the space of 6 months. And it's developed from there. So there's been a lot of learning, a lot of mistakes made, and a lot of successes. But that's kind of the mistakes are kind of its whole experience, and that's kind of where a lot of the stuff I talk about tends to come from, really.
Amazing. So, what was your background? Did you say before you set up your business?
I was I studied in business management, and then I studied my Chartered Institute of Marketing qualifications, and then like I said, I got a job. I couldn't get a job in marketing, so I had to get a job in sales in this company, and then I created the position of marketing manager. Because around 2005, I think, digital marketing had only just started to become a thing. So I introduced, Google Ads at the time was a very new thing. So I had to really pitch it to the directors, like, guys, give me a budget, I can make this thing happen. And we were able to turn what was actually a heavy outbound sales operation with sales guys and cars and mobile phones and hotel fees traveling all over the country to sell a $2,000 piece of kit. I managed to change it from that to being an inbound marketing operation, essentially. And we had people taking calls to sell the cheaper kit, and then the sales guys were only then going out selling the more expensive stuff, which made it more feasible.
Yeah, amazing. So you all inbound marketing yourself now, so all your leads come, so where did they tend to come from?
Very good question. So the most powerful form of marketing is word of mouth. You can't beat it. So over the years, we do a lot of we operate in the business to business arena. So we do a lot of networking, and we get ourselves out there a lot on social media, and a lot of personal brand building, and therefore company brand building. And usually, when someone comes through as a referral or recommendation, that's usually when you get a really good conversion rate. But having said that, we do rank well on Google for a number of terms. So we get a lot of kind of good businesses coming from local traffic. We do a lot of webinars. We do I do speaking events. So a lot of it is profile building type stuff. There isn't just this one channel, this one magical channel that can do that one thing and just bring in absolutely loads of leads. I'm a firm believer in, good, solid, strong, sustainable brand building across a number of market or target audience relevant channels. And that's when, people will kind of trust your brand and make the inquiry.
Yeah, it's like a real balance, isn't it, between spreading yourself too thin, but not putting all your eggs in one basket. And you've got to kind of find that middle ground. And like you say, I think it's building a solid foundation. So you get one place, one channel really cracked. Then you move on to the next channel. I think that avoids the spreading yourself too thin, because a lot of business owners do spread themselves too thin. And I've done that myself, like in the early days, thinking you need all these different social media platforms, and then it just doesn't work. So it's like being able to build the strong foundation in one area and then move. But but yeah, face-to-face networking for web designers is just like really, really powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then, if you're backing that up with stuff that you're doing on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is the digital arena for networking, and you're just consistently getting the same message across, whatever your specific message is as a business. It just reinforces it, and if you're saying the right stuff, it can just get your name out there before you've even met a person.
Yeah, I love LinkedIn. Like, I really love LinkedIn a lot. I think it's just an amazing resource, and I work with people all over the world, and because they have the same problem, regardless of what country you're in, you have this content collection problem that I aim to solve or do solve. So yeah, I've found LinkedIn to be absolutely brilliant. But the reason that I've started building this YouTube channel is just because I've got a solid place. LinkedIn is my solid place, and then like I'm building on that and starting other channels, because
platforms.
So I'm not putting all my eggs in the basket, because that's the worry, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to do it. I mean, it's such a common challenge. When we work on a strategy with a client, we do a lot of strategy work with clients, and it's a case of, where do you start? There's so many millions of things that you can be doing. Where on earth would, where do you actually start? And we have to no one's got unlimited budgets. Time is the most limited resource that we all have. It's the most valuable resource we all have. So we have to systematically say, right, what we call critical success factors. You've told me you want to achieve this much growth in the next 12 months or 24 months. What are the things the critical things that need to happen in order to help you achieve that? So, where you might think, right, yeah, go on every single social media channel, get yourself on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, that channel, that channel. It's just about targeting, honing in on the very specific audience that you're aiming for, where they are, and just building it step by step. So what you're doing there is great. Build it on LinkedIn, and then move it onto YouTube, and then maybe move it onto another platform, and then just build it slowly over time.
So I'm guessing when most of your clients come to you in the construction, manufacturing, the industry, they are looking to be number one on Google. Is that the kind of main thing that people come with?
Yeah, it's very common. We'll get an inquiry and it'll say, we want SEO. And I'll say, why do you want SEO? And they'll say, we want to be number one on Google because we want to get more inquiries. And I'll say, okay. I always then play back a question that I often ask. Imagine this scenario. You're looking for, let's say, a HR consultant, for argument's sake, and you're based in Birmingham. You search HR consultant Birmingham, and you don't recognize the company in the top position, number one on Google, but you think you might have heard of the company in position 2. Which out of those two do you think you're most likely to click on first?
The one you've heard of.
Yeah, and that comes down to, so being number one on Google isn't the be all and end all. The reason you've thought about that you would click on that was because if you think you've heard of them, you may click back. It's very easy just to click back and then just go on to everywhere else. But the fact that you're going for that one, it says that subconsciously you've seen their brand somewhere. On average in a day, you see between 3,000 and 25,000 marketing messages. And that's from research that was done probably a couple of years ago, so it's probably more now. You have to have had, if you think about the room that you're sat in, wherever you are right now, there's branding everywhere. Once you open up your phone, you've got apps shouting at you. When you're on social media, you've got all this messaging coming at you. You have to have touched base, had a touch point with a brand 7 times. I've read research that says 13 times now because there's so much more noise. You have to have a need or a want for this particular product or service, then you're going to take action. So there's a lot of stuff going on that you have to consider. So when it comes back to SEO and ranking number one on Google, your brand needs to be present in as many target audience relevant places as possible, because then that's what will support the Google ranking. So just being number one on Google isn't enough. It's also about the brand building. But then to take that a step further, you can be number one on Google and you might have all this brand building going on around you, but if your website, it doesn't have the right message, and if the design isn't kind of, you know, user friendly, and it's got all kinds of crazy swishy stuff going on, which all looks pretty, but it imposes on the user experience, that's another blockage. There's hurdles at every single stage that you've got to clear out and well, yeah, clear them out in order to actually be able to make sure that process of your prospect, your potential client, goes all the way through to making that inquiry. And then, of course, once they've made the inquiry, you then have to nurture them through your sales process and convert them into a client as well. So there's a lot of touch points that you've got to kind of clear in order to get that client over the
Absolutely.
Mm.
A lot. Most people that come to me have a web designer. Like I'd say like 95% have a web designer, but occasionally I do work with people who are building a website themselves. It doesn't happen very often, but it's usually like marketers or people who are very copy aware anyway. And I always find that the website converts better with good copy and not so good design than it does with bad copy and really good design.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
I 100% agree. So if you think about Solar 7, the 7-stage model I was talking about, at the heart of the model is your brand and your content. Excuse me. And then the stage 4 is the website. So once you've got your brand and your content right, sorry.
No worries.
Once you've got your brand and your content right, that's what goes into the website. And the message is something that is so unbelievably powerful. That's the thing that is going to speak to the intrinsic pain points of the user, and that's ultimately what is going to help them convert. And I do completely agree. You know, I mean, you can't have the extremes where the copy is absolutely amazing and the website is ridiculously bad. But if I had to choose between better copy and not so slightly less good website design, I would go down that route rather than the other way around, because I firmly believe the conversions will be higher in that circumstance than the other way around.
Yeah, because people are looking for solutions to problems, and if the copy speaks to that problem and that pain point, then they're gonna go with that company rather. Like, and that's not to say that design isn't important, because it is, of course. It's like extremely important, and you can definitely you know, the first impressions definitely mean a lot. But like, I'm in agreement that I think that you can get away with a lot more when it comes to design. Like you can get away with you've got a bit more flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do often come across scenarios where a client is working to a very limited budget. You know, if that is the case, sadly, we have to make a decision we have to recommend on, okay, well, if this is the limited budget you're working to, this is the order we recommend working. And if the website is just about okay, it often tends to be, right, let's sort your copy out first, because that first bit of text that your user is going to read has to really, you know, empower them to want to read more or relate to their key pain point, and like you say, solve their problem. That's what it's all about, really.
And once you've got that message cracked and the website copy nice, then you can use that in your social media content as well. It makes social media so much easier. Like often people come to me and they want help with the social media content as well as the website, and I always say to people, get the website finished first and then see how you feel. And you might feel differently about your social media, being able to tackle your social media, because sometimes it's just a case of taking what's on your website and sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, well, again, going back to the Solar 7 model, your brand and your website are at the sun. They're at the hub of the foundation of the whole thing. So if you're drawing the elements from that and maybe shaping it a little bit for your social media, depending on the platform and the message that you want to get across and the tone that you want to get it across in. It is the central hub that you would draw everything from. And the truth is, if people are checking you out on social media and they want to go that step further in the buying process, then they're likely to check you out on your website. And if the messaging on the website is different to what's being said on the social media, it creates this displacement of messaging, and that inconsistency can subconsciously break trust without people even realizing.
Yeah, definitely. So most of my inquiries come through direct message on LinkedIn, but I know, so not through my website technically, but I know from every person I speak to that they've been to my website, they've looked at it, checked out who I say I am, and then they've gone back to LinkedIn to send us a message. It doesn't happen all the time. Sorry, my phone's ringing now. On my watch. I turned my phone off on my actual phone on silent, but I forgot to turn my watch on silent. It tricked
the technology.
So yeah, people definitely do that. I think people don't always realize that even if they're not getting inquiries through the website, that doesn't mean to say people haven't gone there, looked, and checked it out.
And a really interesting thing, actually, it's a real frustration for us because, with the nature of what we do, we talk about return on investment. So when we're working with a client, we have to be able to measure everything, and we have to be able to justify where things have come from. So if somebody's spending money on social media or on the website, all these things, we have to say, right, this has come from here or there. But the reality is say, for example, inquiries might come through a website, for example. So the opposite to the situation you described. We have clients that have stuff that comes through the website. We might also be running the social media for them, but we can't always 100% prove that actually the social media has supported that sale, because you do jump around, and when people are doing the homework, they might have spotted you on social media, gone to the website, and we always encourage people to ask the question, where did you hear about us? But they don't really know the intricacies of what we're looking for. They might say, I'm just on your website, but how did you find the website? You could have found it through any one of the 4 or 5 social media platforms. You could have found it via Google, you could have found it by paid ads, you could have found it by all kinds of other ways and means. So yeah, I think kind of, measuring where something comes from is important, but even then, it's sometimes hard to actually attribute where it's come from. And it goes back to that being present in a number of places. So that people are good, as you just said, Hannah, that people have checked out your website, but the inquiry comes via social media, which is really interesting, actually, because I talk about the website being this sun, this hub. But what we had a talk, and we've talked about this on webinars, that central hub moving into the future, we're actually seeing a shift. I'm not saying websites will become a thing of the past, but the actual importance and the prominence of social media as this central hub is actually becoming more prominent now. I did some research about a year ago, and I asked the question it was a poll. I put a poll out on LinkedIn saying, when you're in a B2B purchase, you're making a B2B purchase, how many times do you visit a website before you make an inquiry? And I gave the options of 2 to 3 times, 4 to 5, and so on and so on. And about 66% of the people said 2 to 3 times. They'll visit a website 2 or 3 times before they make an inquiry. There was a small number of people that said, I don't even visit the website. I just check their social media out. And the people that were saying that, I had a bit of a chat with them, and they were actually of a certain age. They were a generation, millennial generation, probably kind of late 20s. Whereas the people that were answering kind of the 2 to 3 times were probably kind of more 40 to 50 years old. So there's a generational shift in the way that the different types of media are being used. So moving forward, I think websites will always be a very important thing, at least in our lifetimes. But I think that the shift is going to change a little bit, and social media will become so much more powerful to become that lead generator. And you've just demonstrated that, the inquiries come via social media because it's your personal brand, and people know that they can speak directly to you rather than going through something that's a little bit more, almost, for want of a better phrase, faceless through a website.
because they know they'll get a quicker response as well, I think. But this is why it's so important to track everything. And it's, funnily enough, I just got my analytics report for my website yesterday off my web designer. And in that, another really interesting thing that I've noticed before, but this just reminded us, is that most of my viewers are on desktop, not mobile. So there's a big blanket statement that goes around that says, oh, everybody views on mobile these days. Because most of my target audience are web designers, marketers, people who are sitting at a computer every day, a huge, I can't remember the statistic, the percentage exactly, but it was a huge chunk viewing my website on desktop. And of course, all the traffic's coming from LinkedIn. Not all of the traffic, but the majority.
A majority, yeah. And well, in a B2B environment, it tends to be the case. You know, on average, with clients I've worked with over the years, if they're in B2B, it tends to be 70% desktop usage, 20% mobile, and about 10% tablet, which is reducing significantly. You know, tablets, when they became a massive thing about 10 years ago, it was actually higher. But that's the average. And then in a B2C environment, it tends to be the other way around, you know, about 70 odd percent mobile and about 20% desktop. But yeah, like I say, it comes down to the use case. But in a B2B environment, definitely, you know, desktop is a thing. And I think it's Google, you know, the reason websites have to be mobile responsive is it's because it is one of the key things Google wants to see in order to help you rank. So it's just a given now, whereas it was almost a luxury 10 years ago to have a mobile responsive website. Now it's your website has to be mobile responsive, otherwise you're a dinosaur in this age.
From my personal experience, if I'm interested in a service, I do use my mobile obviously a lot to check things out. But if I'm really interested, I always go to my laptop to have a proper look.
Yeah, and that's again, actually, I mean, a great example is, you know, consumer B2C purchasing. You might be sat on your sofa at home having a browse while you're watching the news or EastEnders or whatever. You might be browsing for that next sofa you're going to buy or whatever that thing is. You're having a look at it. When you're getting further and further into the buying process, the next step is usually, if it's something visual like a sofa, let's say, you're probably then going to go onto your laptop or your desktop and look at it from there. And the next stage is probably, well, if it's a physical showroom, you're then going to go into the showroom and check it out. So as a part of kind of the buying sales funnel, that's a general scenario you go through, and especially if it's something visual.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating, isn't it? That I love all the analytics and looking at the data side. But yeah, just for my own personal weird geekiness.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, it really is. I do enjoy doing that as well with our own statistics as well, because it just gives you insight into, well, it's stage 6 and Solar 7 in the model. It's reviewing and measuring and just understanding how people are engaging with your, you know, with your own digital platforms, and that kind of intel can really help you push in one direction or another, with the right kind of intelligence within our own businesses. That's the fundamental thing, really, with the data. You know, you can do all kinds of things. I often kind of like to use the phrase design by data. When we design websites, if we're redesigning a site for a client, we'll have a look at their analytics and the data and see how people are engaging with what pages and what the most popular pages are. And that will often dictate, well, do we want that to be the main call to? If that's a really popular page and it's not so easy to find, let's make it even easier to find. Or if there's a page that they want people to go to more, but it's not getting much traffic, well, let's make it really easy to find. The data kind of dictates what needs to be happening.
Yeah, going back to what you said earlier about people want, obviously, a return on investment and more inquiries, more leads and inquiries. So, but sometimes they think they want more traffic, but really what they need is just better conversion. And you see that from the analytics. So you've got loads of traffic, but you're not getting the sales. It's not that you need more traffic, it's that you need to do something with the traffic you're getting.
Yeah, and it's the quality over quantity scenario. You know, sadly there's a lot of cowboys in our industry when it comes to SEO. And, you know, people might say, yes, we can get you to rank #1 on Google for all kinds of words. And they might be really obscure words, but, you know, they might only get 10 searches per month. And they might be bringing traffic for all kinds of things. But if they're measuring just traffic and not actual conversions, or whatever a conversion looks like to that particular client, sometimes it's a bit of a red herring. And yeah, absolutely. You know, why would you want, if you think of it in inquiries, you know, do you want 10 inquiries per week where only one of them is actually suitable? So you're wasting time speaking on the phone to the other 9 people, or do you want 2 or 3 really strong inquiries that hits the nail on the head, and these people are really worth talking to, and you're more likely to convert them? It's just the quality over quantity, and that fundamentally comes down to the copy and the message. Is the message speaking to the pain point? And if it speaks to the pain point right, then you know you're creating efficiency for the client.
Yeah, definitely repelling the wrong people and attracting the right people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just for an easier life all round.
Yeah, and that's what we all want. I always say that to everyone. Everybody just wants an easy life. Sadly, in business, it isn't as straightforward as that. You think, right, there's the mountain, I want to get to the top. I'll get there, but then what you don't realize is it's like, you know, you're not just climbing the mountain, you're climbing the mountain wearing ice skates with rocks being thrown at you while gale force winds are throwing you around, and then, you know, all kinds of craziness is happening, but you just keep on trudging and keep going to get to where you want to go.
And then you think you've got to the peak, and then there's another one.
And then there's another one afterwards. It's like, okay, right. Nobody told me about this.
Yeah.
But you know, without getting philosophical, that's also life, isn't it? You know, just as you hit one goal, all of a sudden something else comes along.
Yeah, or having almost teenage children. Just having children in general.
Yeah. That's it. That's life.
It's been absolutely brilliant chatting, Jack. I really appreciate you coming and talking to me. I've learned a lot, and also my audience. So thank you for that. Was there anything else that you wanted to kind of add before we go?
Oh, well, I mean, we've talked about a lot of things. Thank you. I've really enjoyed myself today as well. And thank you for having me on the podcast. I don't think there is anything else that I need to add, really. I feel like we've kind of talked about a lot of areas and put elements of the marketing world to right. So I feel pretty comfortable with what we've talked about. So yeah, just thank you for having me on the show.
Brilliant. Right, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some links to the bottom of this email. So I'll add your LinkedIn profile and anything else. I'll have a chat with you in a second to see what links you want added. But yeah, thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and I'll catch you all next time. Bye.